Hello guys, in this session we'll talk about pivot charts. We're gonna see what are pivot charts, how they differ from regular charts. We're gonna see how we can insert and modify them, and also where can they be useful. To do this, we have an example. We will work on the same data set as in the last sessions. We have the online store sales data, and on top of this I built a simple pivot table that shows us sales according to quarter and manufacturer. In the left here we have a regular chart that shows us this information, and in the right here we have a pivot chart. Probably by now you've seen the main difference between charts and pivot charts, and it's in these little buttons: years, brand and quarters. If we click on that, we can see that there are filters. We have filters right within the table, so we can filter the data, for example, according to year. We can filter the data to select only a few brands. We can also filter the data to select a specific quarter. This helps us find the answers that we'll be looking for. For example, in this case, I wanted to see how HTC and BlackBerry compare to quarter 1 and quarter 2 in 2013. It is very flexible and also easy to use and to change, and this is why our managers will probably love pivot charts when they see results. So this is the main difference between pivot tables and between regular charts and pivot charts. I would also like to mention that we cannot have pivot charts without a pivot table. I know it's obvious, but I just wanted to point that out. So this is the main difference, and pivot charts help us to interact with data much better than regular charts. We talked about the differences between regular charts and pivot charts. Now let's see how we can insert a pivot chart. I'm going to delete this one so I have more space. We have multiple options of inserting pivot charts. In the insert tab we have the pivot chart option. If we click on the pivot table in the analyze tab, we have also the pivot charts option, and the third option is in the insert tab. Even if we want to insert a regular chart, because Excel knows that we are in a pivot table, it will insert a pivot chart. I added this, and I would like to point out another difference between these two types of charts. In the regular chart, we see here the data series. We talked about those in the previous sessions, and we can edit, add or remove, and so on. In a pivot chart, we cannot do this. We also have the select data option, but we cannot edit, change, remove anything. So this is another difference between those two. The way we can change how this chart looks like is by changing the columns and the rows in the pivot table. There are also some customization options that differ a little bit from these two types of charts. In the regular charts, we saw in the last sessions that we have the design and format tabs that help us shape our chart. In the pivot table, we have also the design and format tabs, but we also have the analyze tab. And this analyze tab can be found also in the pivot table tools. So this is kind of a common tab. These options we've seen so far. What I want to look is how we can change the field buttons. The field buttons are here, are these filters, and maybe we decide that okay, I don't want to filter by year in this report because it's not relevant for me. I want to see all the time frame. So in this way I can decide to remove the report filter buttons. In this way we can also remove the brand buttons, the quarter buttons, and so on. An easy way to customize our report. So this is it, guys. We saw how these two types of reports differ. We saw how to insert a pivot chart as opposed to a regular chart, and we saw how a pivot chart can be customized as opposed to a regular chart. Important to mention that the pivot chart is less customizable in terms of data series. It basically takes all the data that we have in the pivot table, so we shift our focus from customizing the actual chart to customizing the pivot table, adding rows, columns, and so on. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you in the next session.